The rental Chapter 1. The perfect listing. The Airbnb listing seemed too good to be true. Historic Lake Superior cabin, private. Beach, stunning views. Priced at half the rate of similar properties. Tom and Rebecca Davis had been searching for a month-long retreat to repair their struggling marriage. And this appeared perfect. The host, Martha, had limited reviews, but all 5 stars. A true hidden gem, one guest wrote. Once you arrive, you'll never want to leave. The photos showed a rustic 2-story cabin with weathered cedar, siding, and a massive stone fireplace. But it was the private dock that sold them, stretching 50 feet into the crystal-clear waters of Lake Superior, with a covered sitting area at the end, perfect for the late summer escape they'd planned. What the photos didn't show was the collection of ancient wind chimes hanging from every corner of the house, or the strange symbols carved into the dock's support beams. They wouldn't notice these details until it was too late. The problems started their 3rd night. Rebecca woke to the sound of singing, a woman's voice, distant but clear, coming from the direction of the lake. The melody was unfamiliar, the words in a language she didn't recognize. When she went to investigate, she found Tom already on the dock, staring into the water. "Do you hear it?" she asked. "Hear what?" He didn't look up from the lake's surface. The next morning, Tom had no memory of being on the dock. But Rebecca noticed he seemed different, distracted, spending hours staring out the windows toward the water. He started sleeping less, his skin taking on a gray pallor that he dismissed as simple fatigue. Then they found the journal, hidden in a false bottom of the bedroom dresser. It belonged to Martha's sister, dated 5 years ago. The final entry read, "I understand now why the lake chose this spot. The barrier is thinnest here. They can push through more easily. Martha says the exchanges have been happening for generations. One soul for another. But she never said they would take someone I loved." The rental Chapter 2. The history. Local records painted a disturbing picture. Every 5 years, like clockwork, someone disappeared from the property. The police reports all read similarly. No signs of struggle, no body ever found. The victims were always part of a couple. One would vanish, while the other had no memory of the events leading up to the disappearance. The pattern stretched back to 1897 when the original owner, Margaret Blackwood, built the cabin. She'd claimed the land was special, a place where the veil between worlds was tissue-thin. Local Native American tribes had avoided the area for centuries, calling it the Exchange Shore in their legends. Rebecca discovered that Martha wasn't just the host, she was Margaret, Blackwood's great-great-granddaughter. And every woman in her family line had served as caretaker of the property, maintaining the rental business that lured couples to the lake. 2 weeks into their stay, Tom stopped speaking entirely. He spent his days and nights on the dock, his eyes fixed on something in the depths that only he could see. The wind chimes rang constantly, even when the air was still, their discordant music matching the distant singing that now filled the house every night. Rebecca tried to leave, but every road led back to the cabin. The phone stopped working. The internet connection failed. Even their car wouldn't start. She was trapped, watching helplessly as something slowly replaced her husband's soul with something else. The change completed on the night of the full moon. Rebecca woke to find Tom's side of the bed empty, the sheets soaked with lake water. On the dresser lay a note in his handwriting, but the words were in that same unknown language she'd heard in the singing. She ran to the dock, arriving just in time to see Tom standing at the edge. His skin had turned translucent, and through it, she could see dark water flowing through his veins. Behind him stood Martha, looking exactly as she had in her profile photo from decades ago. "The exchange must be maintained," Martha said softly. "One soul from above, one from below. It's how we keep the balance." Tom turned to Rebecca one last time, but his eyes were now the deep blue of the lake's depths. Without a word, he stepped off the dock. The water didn't splash. It seemed to reach up and pull him in, leaving nothing but ripples in the moonlight. The rental Chapter 3. The aftermath. The police report would later state that Tom Davis suffered from sleepwalking and accidentally drowned. They found no evidence of foul play, and Rebecca's stories of singing and soul exchange were attributed to trauma and grief. The Airbnb listing disappeared, only to reappear 5 years later under a different name. But locals know to watch for it. The too good to be true rental with the private dock and the 5-star reviews. They say if you look carefully at the photos, you might catch a glimpse of faces in the lake's reflection, wearing the expressions of people who were once guests at the cabin. Rebecca never returned to Lake Superior, but she keeps track of the missing persons reports in the area. Every 5 years, like clockwork, another couple checks into a lakeside rental. And every time, only one of them checks out. Some say on quiet nights, you can still hear the singing from the lake. The locals call it a siren's song, but Rebecca knows better. It's the sound of an exchange in progress. The music of souls trading places across the barrier between worlds. The rental listing is still out there, waiting for the next couple seeking a perfect lakeside getaway. The reviews are always glowing, and the price is always just a little too good to be true. Mirror Lake Massacre Chapter 1. The documentary. Documentary filmmaker Maya Chen couldn't believe her luck when she got permission to film at Mirror Lake. The location had been off-limits since 1987, when an entire family vanished during their summer vacation. The case remained unsolved, but the raw footage from their old camcorder had become legendary in true crime. Circles, 8 minutes of static-filled video showing impossible reflections in the lake's surface. Now, 38 years later, Maya and her small crew were the first people legally allowed to stay in the preserved lake house. Everything remained exactly as it had been that summer night. Dishes in the sink, beds still made, the family station wagon in the garage with a full tank of gas. The lake itself was unnaturally still, living up to its name. Even on windy days, the surface remained glass smooth, reflecting the sky and surrounding trees with perfect clarity. Too perfect, Maya would soon realize. Mirror Lake Massacre Chapter 2. The footage. The problems began when they started reviewing their first day's footage. Every shot of the lake showed something different from what they'd filmed. Where Maya had recorded herself standing alone on the dock, the playback showed dark figures standing behind her, dozens of them, their features distorted as if viewed through rippling water. The audio was worse. Behind every interview, beneath every ambient sound recording, they could hear voices having conversations that never happened, children laughing, people screaming, and underneath it all, a constant whispered phrase: "Look deeper. See yourself. Look deeper." Their equipment started malfunctioning in strange ways. Cameras would record for hours after being turned off. Microphones picked up sounds from days that hadn't happened yet. The lake seemed to be feeding them its own story, one frame at a time. Mirror Lake Massacre Chapter 3. The Reflections. On the third night, they discovered why the lake had earned its name. Maya was setting up for a night shoot when she noticed her reflection in the water wasn't following her movements. It stood still, staring up at her with an expression she'd never worn. Then it smiled. The crew's reflections began acting independently too. They would wave when their real counterparts stood still, or show them in completely different locations around the lake. Sometimes, the reflections would show them drowning, their faces pressed against the surface from below, mouths open in silent screams. The original family's camcorder footage finally made sense. Those impossible reflections weren't camera glitches, they were windows into whatever world existed on the other side of the lake's surface. And that world was getting closer. Mirror Lake Massacre Chapter 4. The Other Side. The breakthrough came when they played all their footage simultaneously on different screens. The overlapping images revealed a pattern. The lake wasn't just reflecting reality. It was showing pieces of multiple timelines. In some, the original family never disappeared. In others, dozens of different groups had met similar fates over decades. But it was the future footage that terrified them most. Their cameras had somehow recorded their own fates, playing out in endless variations. In every version, the lake's surface broke, and what emerged wasn't water. The truth was written in the original case files. In a note they found hidden inside the house's walls. The lake doesn't reflect our world. Our world reflects the lake. We're the echoes, not them. And they're tired of the arrangement. Mirror Lake Massacre Chapter 5. The final shot. Maya's last diary entry was found alongside 6 hours of footage that authorities still won't release publicly. The entry read, "I understand now. Mirror Lake isn't a lake at all. It's a thin spot in reality. Those reflections are the real versions of ourselves. And we're the imperfect copies. They've been trying to correct the mistake for years. Tonight, they'll finally succeed." The recovered footage shows Maya and her crew standing on the dock at midnight, their reflections rising up to meet them. In the final frame, both versions merge, and the lake's surface shatters like glass. The police found the house empty, the crew's equipment scattered across the property. The only clue was the playback on their cameras, showing the same 8 minutes of footage from 1987, now with Maya and her crew visible in the background, standing among the other lost reflections. Mirror Lake is closed again, but satellite images show strange distortions in the water's surface. Sometimes, on perfectly still nights, people report seeing camera lights beneath the surface, as if someone is still trying to document what exists on the other side of our reality. Local diving teams refuse to search the lake. They say the reflections down there don't match the divers who enter the water. And sometimes, they see camera crews walking along the lake bottom, filming something in the depths that only they can see. The depths below Chapter 1. The return. The lake house stood exactly as Sarah remembered it. Weathered gray, siding reflecting dully in the late afternoon light. 10 years had passed since that summer, yet the pier still creaked the same way under her feet as she walked its length. Testing the old boards. The real estate agent had called it a steal. No one had wanted to buy after what happened to the Morrison family. But Sarah knew something they didn't. Whatever dwelled in the depths hadn't taken the Morrisons. They had given themselves willingly. The depths below Chapter 2. The reflection. The first night back, Sarah noticed how the lake's surface seemed to ripple even without wind. From her bedroom window, she watched dark shapes move beneath the water, too large to be fish, too deliberate to be shadows. The moon's reflection fragmented into dozens of gleaming eyes that blinked back at her. When she finally fell asleep, the lapping of waves against the shore sounded like whispered conversations. The depths below Chapter 3. The invitation. It started with small things, wet footprints, leading from the lake to her door each morning, even though she hadn't gone swimming. The gentle tune of music box melodies drifting across the water at midnight. Then came the letters, written in lake water that never seemed to dry, appearing on her bathroom mirror. "We've been waiting for you to come home. Sarah, the others miss you. Don't you remember our games?" Sarah did remember. She remembered the summer she spent here at 12 years old. The secret midnight swims with creatures that looked like children, but had skin that rippled like water. They had taught her to breathe beneath the surface, showed her cities built from sunken dreams and broken promises. They had asked her to stay then, but she had been too afraid. The Morrisons, though, they had been braver. Now, standing at the edge of the pier under a star-filled sky, Sarah watches the water stir. Pale hands reach up through the surface. Familiar faces shimmer just beneath. The Morrison children, eternally young, their smiles just as bright as she remembered. Behind them, in the deeper water, ancient structures glow with a light that never reached the surface world. The choice is still there, waiting. This time, Sarah takes a step forward, then another. The water feels like coming home. The depths below, Part 2, Chapter 1. The descent. The water embraced Sarah like an old friend, cool fingers of current pulling her deeper into the lake's secrets. As she descended, her fear dissolved into wonder. The Morrison children, Emma and James, led her through sheets of silver bubbles, their forms shifting between human and liquid shadow. The lake had preserved them exactly as they were 10 years ago, eternal children of the deep. What Sarah had glimpsed from above was nothing compared to the reality below. Ancient spires of twisted coral and obsidian rose from the lake bed, windows glowing with bioluminescent light, streets paved with mother of pearl, wound between buildings that seemed to breathe with the current. Here, in this submerged metropolis, hundreds of others like the Morrisons moved with fluid grace, those who had chosen the lake over the world above. The depths below, Part 2, Chapter 2. The revelation. Time moves differently here, Emma Morrison explained, her voice carrying clearly through the water. A day above is a lifetime below, yet we never age, never tire. Sarah watched as schools of impossible fish with stained glass fins drifted through the ruins of what appeared to be an old church. "But there's something you need to know," James added, his eyes darkening like storm clouds. "The lake has a price for its gifts." The deeper they swam, the more Sarah noticed the shadows that lurked at the edges of this underwater paradise. Massive shapes moved in the darkness beyond the city's boundaries. Ancient guardians of whatever power had created this place. They're the Watchers, Emma whispered. They ensure no one leaves once they've chosen to stay. The last person who tried. She trailed off, pointing to a collection of statues in what appeared to be the city square. Sarah's heart froze. They weren't statues at all, but perfectly preserved figures. Their faces frozen in eternal screams. The Depths Below, Part 2, Chap 3. The Decision. Standing before the Underwater Council in their chamber of living coral, Sarah faced her final choice. The lake's magic could be hers. Eternal life in this mysterious realm. But the surface world would have to become nothing more than a distant memory. As she looked back up toward the wavering light of the world above, Sarah thought of all she'd be leaving behind. But then she felt it, the pulse of ancient power thrumming through the water. The secrets still waiting to be discovered in the depths. She opened her mouth to give her answer. The Depths Below, Part 3, Chap 1. The Covenant. Sarah's voice echoed through the underwater chamber. I accept. The words rippled outward like shock waves, causing the coral walls to pulse with an eerie blue light. The council members, beings that seemed made of water and starlight, moved forward in perfect synchronization. Remember, their collective voice resonated in her mind. The lake claims what it loves forever. As they spoke, Sarah felt a familiar presence, something that reminded her of her grandmother's spirit from years ago. Another Sarah who had made a different kind of supernatural choice. The change began slowly. Sarah's skin took on a pearlescent sheen, her hair floating around her like dark seaweed in an eternal current. She could feel the lake's ancient magic seeping into her bones, replacing blood with water that glowed with bioluminescence. The Morrison children watched with knowing smiles as she discovered her new abilities, the power to shape water, to breathe life into the depths, to sing songs that could call storms or calm them. But the lake's gifts came with shadows. Sarah began to forget, first small things, like the taste of coffee or the feeling of sun on skin. Then bigger things started to fade, her mother's face, the sound of her father's laugh, even her own last name. The Watchers ensured these memories dissolved like salt in water, making room for new ones in their underwater kingdom. Each lost memory became another pearl in the lake's collection, another story added to its ancient depths. The Depths Below, Part 3, Chap 2. The Guardian. Years passed in the world above, but Sarah remained unchanged in the lake's embrace. She became one of the guardians of the underwater city, helping to guide new souls who were drawn to the water's mysteries. Sometimes, on moonless nights, she would rise to the surface and watch the lights of passing cars, remembering what it was to be human. The lake house above had fallen into disrepair, but she kept the pier intact, a bridge between two worlds. One summer evening, a young girl stood on the pier, peering into the dark water. Sarah recognized the look in her eyes, the same longing she had felt all those years ago. But this time, Sarah made a different choice. Rising to the surface, her form shimming between water and woman, she spoke. The lake offers eternal life, but living means more than just existing forever. She shared her story as a warning and a gift, breaking the cycle that had claimed so many before her. The girl left the pier that night, carrying Sarah's tale with her, ensuring that some stories are better left as legends than lived experiences. Now, Sarah patrols the boundaries between the underwater city and the mortal world. She's found her purpose as a guardian not of secrets, but of truth. The Watchers accepted her choice, understanding that sometimes the greatest power lies not in keeping souls beneath the waves, but in letting them choose their own path. The lake house stands as both a warning and a monument, its reflection in the water a reminder that some choices, once made, last longer than eternity.